The first time I heard a dead person speak was in my brother-in-law's office. A haggard-looking woman was crying as though her heart had been torn apart. My daughter, my poor daughter. I kicked my short little legs, picked up the taro bubble tea from the desk, and inserted the straw. I offered it to the weeping woman and comforted her. "Auntie, are you looking for your daughter? Isn't she lying right there on your back?" The air froze. I was the only one who could see the transparent figure on Auntie's back, flashing me a victory sign. The anguished expression on the woman's face instantly stiffened. "What did you say?" The room became so quiet that a falling needle could have been heard. Everyone's mind crashed. My brother-in-law's hand stopped just before he stamped the insurance policy. He looked at me in astonished suspicion. I hesitated, then repeated myself. "Auntie, can't you see her? Your daughter is lying on your back. She says." Before I could finish, my older sister rushed forward, scooped me up, and carried me away. She bowed awkwardly. "I'm sorry, my little sister watches too many cartoons. She's only 6, she likes imitating people on television, so please don't read too much into it." I kicked my short legs helplessly. My sister had not been wrong. Whenever I came home from school, I loved squatting in front of the television and imitating princesses and elderly palace maids. I often performed for the adults at the dinner table to make them happy, but this time it was real, actually. Before I could finish, my sister quickly covered my mouth and carried me aside. She coaxed me quietly beside my ear. "My little ancestor, don't disturb your brother-in-law while he's working. Be good, I'll take you to buy candy later." Her emotions forcibly interrupted. Mrs. Sue stopped wailing on the floor. She wiped the corners of her eyes and stood up awkwardly. Children speak without restraint. "I'm fine, Mr. Sue," beside her, quietly shot me a vicious glare. "Mr. Liang, we brought the death certificate, and all the procedures comply with the rules. You can stamp it now, can't you?" Seeing that the stamp in my brother-in-law's hand was about to come down, I moved quickly. I pulled my sister's hand away from my mouth, ran 2 or 3 steps to a chair, climbed up, and cleared my throat. "Mom, this is the little red flower my teacher gave me today. When I grow up, I'll buy Mom a big villa and earn lots and lots of money for you and my little brother. Please don't sell me to Grandpa Lou, okay?" Every trace of color drained from Mrs. Sue's face. She staggered several steps backward. It was as though she were truly looking at me for the first time. What are you talking about?" Her voice suddenly became shrill. "Don't think you can frighten me by talking to the air." "Talking to the air?" I pouted unhappily. "That isn't air." She turned her head away. Her lips trembled slightly. "Does your company not want to pay the claim, so you deliberately brought a child here to frighten me, Mr. Sue strode forward and slammed a hand onto the office desk, a cold sneer in his voice. The teacups on the desk rattled 3 times. "Liang, I've paid insurance premiums to you people for years. Now that there's been an accident, you don't want to pay. Is that it?" he roared. "I'm warning you, I'm not someone you can bully." My sister and brother-in-law looked at each other and exchanged a glance. My sister's voice trembled. "Xiaofu, who are you talking to?" "No, who are you imitating?" I raised my head. Everyone in the room was looking at me strangely. I swallowed. I didn't want to say anything, but that big sister is so pitiful. She's soaking wet and keeps lying on Auntie's back. Water stains spread to my feet. I tilted my head. "Big sister, why are you crying?" Mrs. Sue's pupils contracted, and she abruptly looked behind her, but there was nothing there. "I'm warning you. Don't talk nonsense. Don't think you can scare me by making up a few things." Panic filled her eyes. Her sorrowful expression from moments earlier had vanished completely. I shook my head. It seemed Auntie truly could not see her daughter. Poor Auntie. I would help her. I puffed out my little chest and repeated the words one by one. "How much money could we get by selling her to that old man named Lou?" "Listen to me. We should go for something big." "Mom, why did you push me? Why did you poke me with a bamboo pole?" "Mom, the water is freezing. I'm so cold." I spoke very slowly, in one breath. I reenacted everything the ghostly big sister had shown me. Then I looked up at Mrs. Sue. The entire room was deathly silent. It was not ordinary silence. It was the kind of terrified silence that blocked everyone's throat. There was a thud. Mrs. Sue collapsed onto the floor. "Impossible. There was clearly no one there. How could you know?" No. It's all made up. Made up." I said nothing. Her entire body was like a string about to snap. She frantically struck at her own back. "You wretched girl, get off me, stop following me. If you want to blame someone, blame your father." He insisted that we, Mr. Sue's expression shifted, and he cut her off with a slap. "You let the words of a little girl frighten you. she suddenly turned to look at me. The malice in her eyes had been replaced by fear. Her lips trembled. She did not argue. It took her several attempts to straighten her legs and stand. She struck the corner of the desk, raising a large purple bruise. As though she could not feel it, she stumbled outside. She did not even take the $1,000,000 insurance policy. I had only said a few things throughout the entire exchange, yet Mr. and Mrs. Su fled in terror. They did not even try to verify anything, because those sentences were the final words spoken by their eldest daughter, Su Xiaohua, before her death. Every single word, not one detail was wrong. They killed their child to commit insurance fraud, my brother-in-law said softly. I raised my little hand and waited to be praised. My brother-in-law, Liang Hao, crouched and gently rubbed my head. Xiaofu, tell me, how did you know? At first, everyone had assumed it was merely the unfiltered imagination of a child, but when Mr. and Mrs. Su fled, their expressions made the truth obvious. Without further verification, I sucked up a tapioca pearl and chewed it. I saw it, so none of you can see them. He said nothing. He exchanged an unreadable glance with my sister. I sighed, walked to the desk on my short little legs, and lightly touched the case file. As long as I touch this booklet, I can see it. My sister's and brother-in-law's eyes lit up at once, so brightly it was frightening. Are you saying that as long as you touch the relevant case file, you can see how these dead brothers and sisters died? I tilted my head and thought about it, then I nodded. That description did not seem wrong. I had just seen Auntie push her daughter into a reservoir and jab her with a bamboo pole to stop her from swimming back up. My sister rubbed her arms, suddenly feeling that the room had turned eerie. My brother-in-law looked around the room. Of course, neither of them could see anything. After a few seconds, my sister took a deep breath and spoke in the tone of the big bad wolf addressing Little Red Riding Hood. Would you like to help your sister with something? I immediately became vigilant. No, my sister smiled sweetly. You won't help for free. There will be plenty of rewards. My toes, already pointed toward the exit, curved back around. What rewards? Her expression was extremely kind. Spicy crawfish, mala hot pot, barbecue, hot pot, ice cream. My face showed no emotion, but tears of hunger were already spilling from the corners of my mouth. My sister chuckled and decided to bring out her ultimate move, the amusement park, roller coasters, diving and skiing, and, I'll take you to do all of them. Deal, deal. I hurriedly raised both hands in agreement. Afraid she might change her mind, the two of them exchanged a glance and revealed mysterious smiles. My brother-in-law lifted me onto his shoulders. Let's go. Big brother will take you to eat a full imperial banquet tonight. Only later did I learn that it was called a capitalist's last supper. My older sister and brother-in-law owned an insurance company. Their main job was examining whether claims were genuine or involved insurance fraud. Mom said that if I had not exposed that fraudulent couple the day before, my sister's company would almost have paid out everything it had. My sister said I had the sacred constitution of a natural-born insurance investigator. She also said I had been born with the physique of a perfect wage slave. What was a wage slave? Before I could fully understand, I was carried into the archives the next day. My brother-in-law coughed softly and placed an insurance policy on the desk. Xiaofu, can you see anything from this one? I blinked and reached out to touch it. Don't worry, it's a small case. They stared at me with burning eyes. She died in a fire. No, no. Her father deliberately locked his daughter inside a burning room and refused to let her out. He's a bad man. My brother-in-law exhaled in relief. Only then did he produce the accident investigation report stored on the final page of the policy. The case had already been thoroughly investigated. They merely wanted to test whether my ability was reliable. The test was complete. With a flash, their eyes shone like brilliant light bulbs. Then they suddenly carried over a stack of files taller than I was. There's no hurry. Take your time. I thought I was beginning to understand what wage slave meant. I slowly turned the pages one by one. This Mr. cut his wife into lots of pieces and put her in a suitcase under the bed. This man deliberately hired someone to run over his mother. And this one, wow, sister, what's a honey trap? No matter how difficult or obscure the case was, one touch let me see who had died in an accident and who was acting. The more I spoke, the darker their expressions became. The way they looked at me changed from shock to numbness. With trembling hands, my sister pulled out her phone and immediately called the police. Hello, police. Someone here murdered his mother for the insurance money. After thinking about it, she added, there are also 7 cases involving murdered wives and 1 involving a murdered husband. Yes, all of them were insurance fraud. 2 days later, Mr. and Mrs. Su and several other insurance Fraudsters were arrested on the spot. Disaster had fallen on them while they sat comfortably at home. Not only were they going to prison, but the payouts were recovered and their reputations destroyed. They could never have imagined that the schemes they considered flawless and the evidence they had concealed so carefully would somehow be discovered by the police, leaving them nowhere even to argue their innocence. One of them had already taken the money and boarded a plane, preparing to fly overseas. 1 second before takeoff, the unfortunate man was urgently dragged back by the police and sent straight to jail. Officer Chen, who answered the phone, inexplicably received several additional commendation banners. I also inexplicably ate several extra pots of spicy fish. The days passed. My belly grew rounder by the day. Just as we finished going through nearly all the old case files, a new insurance claim arrived. An unfortunate couple had become trapped on a snowy mountain. The rescue team found only the man. The woman had disappeared. By the time the woman was found, wild animals had eaten half her body. The autopsy report stated, no fatal mechanical injuries or signs of poisoning were observed during examination of the decedent's body surface and internal anatomy. A comprehensive assessment was consistent with depletion of the body's energy reserves due to starvation, followed by rapid onset hypothermia after exposure to low temperatures in the wilderness. The decedent ultimately died of multiple organ failure caused by hypothermia and starvation. There was nothing wrong with the process. It was neither homicide nor suicide. It was a typical accident. As usual, my brother-in-law made more than a dozen trips to the police station to conduct a detailed investigation. My sister reviewed the evidence, compared the lists, and contacted the investigators. They truly found no problems. The man was named Gu Ming, and the woman was Luo Shanshan. They had grown up together, formally started dating at university, and registered their marriage 3 years after graduation. Their families were well matched in social and financial standing. Both loved outdoor activities, so each had purchased insurance for the other. They wanted protection in case anything happened. The policies had been purchased several years earlier. No one had died immediately after they were issued. My brother-in-law rotated the pen in his fingers and stared at the compensation amount for several seconds. 10 million yuan. Across the office desk, Gu Ming's eyelashes trembled. His deathly pale face was filled with grief too intense to dissolve. His shoulders were still shaking. Behind him, an elderly man comfortingly patted his shoulder. I watched this boy grow up. He has always been a devoted son. An elderly woman hugged him and wept. Our daughter wronged you. If she hadn't insisted on going into the mountains, and if you hadn't tried to save her, your leg wouldn't have been left crippled. There truly are no problems. The insurance payout will be transferred to your account by the end of today. My brother-in-law nodded lightly and closed the evidence list. He turned his head. Xiaofu, would you like to take a look? Only then did Gu Ming notice the child behind the office desk. He froze for a second, then smiled politely. What an adorable little girl. He pulled a milk candy from his pocket. Then he crouched and held it out to me. I did not take it, because I was looking at something else. Half a person hung above his head. The woman wore an orange hiking jacket and chewed half a piece of candy. Her gaze was dark enough to drip water. Gu Ming, how dare you, she screamed. It was you. You lied and said you were going to find the rescue team. You left me the last piece of candy and told me to hide quietly inside the cave without making a sound. But it was all a lie. You were the one who hid me inside the cave. Yet you told the rescue team that we had become separated long ago and that you couldn't find me. It was you. I took half a step backward. The milk candy Gu Ming offered fell to the floor. He smiled and stroked my head. What's wrong? Don't you like it? Big brother has other kinds too. My brother-in-law noticed the scene, and his brow twitched. Xiaofu, did you see something again? I looked at Gu Ming, then at the ghostly big sister. Although the ghostly sister was fierce and the big brother before me seemed gentle, wrong was still wrong. My teacher had taught us to do the right thing. I shouted to my brother-in-law, Big brother is a bad man. You can't give him the money. He hid big sister in the cave and then deliberately walked away. My voice was soft and childish yet certain, drawing everyone's attention to me. The air abruptly fell silent. Gu Ming's eyelids twitched. Little girl, what are you talking about? The elderly woman glanced down at me and frowned. Whose child is this? Adults are speaking. A child shouldn't make trouble. My son-in-law could never do such a thing. Everyone has seen how well he treated my daughter. The elderly man's voice darkened. Mr. Liang, since the claim has been approved, we'll be leaving. He reached for the policy on the desk. My quick-handed brother-in-law pulled it away. Wait, his expression had changed the instant he heard me speak. Xiaofu, tell us exactly what you saw. The elderly woman objected indignantly. My daughter paid premiums to your company for all these years. Now that something happened, you don't want to pay, and you want To use a child's nonsense as an excuse, the woman's ghost sobbed, "Mom, don't let that hypocrite deceive you, he's a lying fraud. I wasn't the one who insisted on hiking into the mountains. He told me the route had already been planned and the equipment was ready. He dragged me up the snowy mountain in the middle of the night, saying he wanted to show me the stars in the snow. I climbed onto the chair and put my hands on my hips. Then I repeated the ghostly big sister's words one by one. Oh. Right, I almost forgot the candy." I tapped my forehead with my little fist and said in a clear voice, "Big sister says you left her the last milk candy only to keep her calm." The elderly woman denied it immediately, shaking her head like a rattle drum. "They grew up so close they practically wore the same pair of pants. When they were 5, he even climbed over our wall to find my daughter at bedtime. He followed her everywhere from childhood. How could he possibly do such a thing, Mr. Liang? If you don't want to pay, say so. Why make a child slander my son-in-law? I know exactly how good my son-in-law is." The elderly woman watched us warily, as though she might rush over and hit someone at any moment. Gu Ming's eyes flickered, but he did not panic. He slowly pulled a report from an inner layer of his clothing, took out his phone, opened a record, and calmly placed both on the desk. "Mr. Liang, these are the messages between my wife and me before we entered the mountains. If you still have concerns, you may examine them again. And here is the autopsy report." He paused. I originally didn't want her parents to see it. When he glimpsed the photographs in the report, he choked back a sob. His back bent slightly. He turned away and raised the back of his hand to wipe his eyes where no one could see. Upon seeing the photographs, the elderly woman's lips trembled, and she began to sob too. "My darling, why were you so stubborn? Why did you insist on going hiking? Our Shanshan dragged you into this and ruined your left leg. If you hadn't tried to save her, you never would have suffered like this." Gu Ming sighed. Tears still clung to the corners of his eyes, and his voice was hoarse. "Shanshan was the wife I chose. How could I ever leave her to die? I wish the rescue team had found Shanshan first instead of me." His words moved everyone present. A trace of uncertainty crossed my brother-in-law's eyes. "Xiaofu, are you sure you didn't see it wrong?" Gu Ming's Adam's apple bobbed. His eyes remained red. "All the evidence is complete, and the public security authorities have confirmed it. I don't understand why you keep questioning a child. Was she at the scene? I don't want to make things difficult for your company, but you can see what happened to my left leg. Not only did I lose my job, but I still owe the hospital a large amount for treatment. On top of that, I must support both sets of elderly parents. The hospital is already demanding payment. Please transfer the compensation to my account this afternoon, otherwise, I'll have no choice but to take legal action to protect my rights." He sighed, sounding utterly helpless. The elderly woman wiped her tears and whispered, "What a good boy. Our daughter simply wasn't fortunate enough." My brother-in-law stared at him for several seconds, then relented. "Very well, the money will be transferred this afternoon." He took out the policy again and stamped it with the red seal. The word, "approved," stood out clearly. I pursed my lips, my face full of defiance. "Bad man, you're a bad man." The ghostly big sister had shown me everything. Gu Ming crouched in front of me until our eyes were level. His voice was gentle enough to drip water. "Little girl, tell big brother who taught you to lie." My eyebrows twitched, and I folded my arms across my chest. "I'm not lying. I did not know what hypocrite the word the ghostly big sister had used meant, but I did not like the way he looked at me. It was the way someone looked at an unreasonable, spoiled child. Gu Ming shook his head with an amused laugh, stood, and prepared to take the policy and leave. Suddenly, the ghost cried out, "I remember now. I rolled down the mountain trying to save him. My lower body lost all sensation, so I could only lie there. Later, when the mountain became unbearably cold, that bastard tightly covered my legs with our only coat and tied a dead knot in it. He said he was afraid I would freeze and refused to let me lift it. After he left with the rescue team, I kept waiting. When he didn't return, I thought something had happened to him, so I crawled out of the cave to look for him. Then, the moment I lifted the coat, I saw that both my legs had been reduced to bare bone. That monster had been secretly cutting off my flesh and eating it. No wonder he still looked well fed after we had been trapped for more than 10 days. He had meat at every meal. I pitched my voice higher and repeated, "Shanshan, I'm going farther away to look for a signal. Wait for me. I'll definitely find the rescue team and bring them back." Something subtly vicious twisted Gu Ming's expression. It lasted only a fraction of a second, so briefly that it might have been an illusion. Almost immediately, his face returned to normal. My brother-in-law's expression darkened. "I'm sorry, but it appears some doubts remain unresolved. We can't transfer the money until we investigate them. Gu Ming straightened, displaying anger on the surface, but his eyes were frighteningly cold. Do you enjoy playing supernatural tricks to frighten people? I can't communicate with you. I'll have my attorney address these defamatory accusations. My brother-in-law held the policy and refused to yield an inch. Wait a little longer, the prescribed period has not expired. The final deadline under the contract is midnight tonight. Suit yourself. The elderly woman spat viciously. Heartless people. You're even delaying his medical expenses. Before leaving, Gu Ming stared at me for 3 seconds. The moment they left and the office door closed, I grabbed the hem of my brother-in-law's clothes. Big brother, I saw something else. A phone. Ghost big sister hid a spare phone inside a crack between some rocks. She says there are pictures on it. My sister had only just entered and did not yet understand the situation. What do you mean? My brother-in-law's expression, however, darkened. He slammed a fist onto the office desk. He had seen many cases, but few had been this disgusting. After organizing his thoughts, he pulled out the evidence folder and handed it to my sister. He summarized what I had just reenacted. The next second, my sister became even angrier than he was. She punched the office desk. This time, it split cleanly in half. That filthy bastard. I'll tear him apart with my own hands. My brother-in-law wrapped his arms around her waist, both amused and helpless. Don't. If you rush over and hit him now, we'll end up owing him compensation. Wouldn't that be exactly what he wants? Let's go to the police station, organize the evidence, and send him straight to the firing squad. Fuck his entire family. As she cursed, my sister thoughtfully covered my ears. The police urgently dispatched a search team. 8 hours later, they found a phone hidden at the very bottom of a rock crevice and rushed it to the digital forensics unit for analysis. They discovered not only photographs from the time, but also audio and video recordings. Luo Shanshan had secretly made them as her final testament, both to document the final moments of her life and to leave an explanation for her parents. Even Gu Ming had not known about the spare phone. Now it became the evidence that nailed him. The proof was overwhelming. It was enough to prove that Gu Ming had deliberately abandoned Luo Shanshan and concealed what had happened to her. At the same time, my brother-in-law specifically insisted on prion testing. Human cannibalism carries a high risk of transmitting prion. The moment Officer Chen received Luo Shanshan's spare phone, he applied for an arrest warrant and listed Gu Ming as the primary criminal suspect. That evening, Gu Ming was detained at his law firm. It was 2 a.m. in the police interrogation room. Gu Ming sat in an iron chair, the handcuffs around his wrists reflecting a cold gleam. Across from him, Officer Chen spread a stack of printed photographs across the table, arranging them one by one. The first showed the bare bones of Luo Shanshan's legs, with the muscle tissue gradually carved away. The second showed dark red bloodstains, already blackened, on rocks in the corner of the cave. The expert team had previously concluded that the blood resulted from an animal attack. In the third, Luo Shanshan's phone screen was lit, and the audio recording interface showed a duration of 37 minutes. Leniency for confession, severity for resistance. Officer Chen tapped the tabletop. The instant Gu Ming saw the photographs, his pupils contracted sharply for 1 second. His knuckles whitened slightly. Officer, I've cooperated with this investigation many times. I'm a victim too. Is there any need to keep hounding me? His eyes were red. Shanshan was my wife. I'm devastated by her accident as well. Even at this point, he continued performing. Officer Chen ignored him, tapped the phone, and played a recording. Static surged out first, followed by Luo Shanshan's voice, as weak as a thread that might snap at any moment. Mom, I don't think I'll make it. He covered my legs with the coat and tied it in a dead knot. He said he was afraid I would freeze. I can't move, and I can't feel my lower body. He said he was going to find help and told me to wait. The recording was silent for a long time, then came another rustling sound, as though she were dragging her body. I want to lift the coat and look at my legs. Why do they hurt so much? Why does it smell? A muffled impact sounded in the recording, as though something heavy had fallen to the ground. Then came a scream. It was not fear, it was utter collapse. My legs, where are my legs? The screaming continued so long that the recording began to distort. Finally, it became sobbing. Mom, I'm so hungry. When he cut the flesh away, I was still alive, wasn't I? I was conscious the entire time. I thought I was dreaming. I thought I simply couldn't feel anything. The recording ended there. The interrogation room remained silent for 5 seconds. Gu Ming's eyes were still red, but the curve of his mouth had stiffened. Did the insurance company fabricate this? My wife's phone was clearly at the hotel. How could such an inexplicable recording have been at the scene? I want to see my lawyer. He sounded forceful and self-righteous, but his voice had begun to tremble. Officer Chen shook his head without answering and opened the second file. This time, it was a video. The image was very dark, only the phone screen illuminated the narrow space. Luo Shanshan leaned against the rock wall, her lips were cracked, and her cheekbones were so hollow that the outlines of her bones were visible. She smiled at the camera. Is today the 10th day without food? I can't remember. Gu Ming still hasn't returned from looking for rescue. Maybe the signal is poor, or maybe the route is difficult. His leg is injured too. I don't know whether he can hold on. She looked down at the coat covering her legs. He gave me his coat and kept so little clothing for himself. What if he freezes? Her fingers gripped the edge of the coat. She wanted to lift it and look, but she drew her hand back. No, he said I mustn't lift it. If the wound freezes, it could become infected. A faint sound of water came from beyond the camera's view. Luo Shanshan turned her head and looked off screen. Gu Ming, are you back? No one answered. Her face paled. She lowered her voice toward the camera. Gu Ming left all the food for me. He didn't bear to eat a single bite. At the time, she did not know that her legs had been gone for 3 days. The video continued. Luo Shanshan spoke to the camera about her childhood with Gu Ming. She described how he had climbed over the wall into her courtyard when they were 5 and broken a front tooth, how, at university, he played guitar beneath her dormitory until security chased him away, how, on the day they received their marriage certificate, he cried harder than she did. She said many things. She cried and laughed. Officer Chen stopped the video. At last, Gu Ming's expression changed slightly, not from fear or regret, but from irritation that his plan had been disrupted. He said, I didn't do any of this. I deny it. Don't try to coerce a confession out of me. Officer Chen gave a cold laugh and pushed a new test report toward him. Prion screening. The results from your blood sample are back. Gu Ming's eyelid twitched. Officer Chen spoke evenly. You were clever. You knew decomposition would be slow in a low-temperature environment, and you knew to avoid the major arteries when cutting tissue from a living person. You even knew to remove only a small piece each day so she would remain alive longer. The irrefutable evidence lay before him. Gu Ming fell silent. He remained silent for a long time. Just when everyone thought he might feel remorse, he laughed. It was different from the grief he had performed earlier. This time, his laughter was genuine. Do you know what it feels like to reach the 7th day without food? He leaned slightly forward. The cuffs around his wrists struck the edge of the iron table with a dull thud. When hunger reaches its limit, you want to swallow your own body. Do you know what it feels like to look at someone who cannot feel anything, someone who is practically dead, lying beside you? He swallowed. She was going to die anyway. Her legs were shattered so badly that she couldn't have survived even if the rescue team arrived. I only cut away flesh she no longer needed. The sound of people vomiting rose throughout the interrogation room. Officer Chen frowned in disgust. Behind the one-way glass, my brother-in-law held me while my sister stood beside him, her fists clenched until her knuckles whitened. I pressed against the glass. I saw more things growing above Gu Ming's head. The ghostly big sister had grown many mouths. They appeared on top of his head, across his shoulders, and down his back. They bit into his shadow one mouthful at a time. The ghostly big sister crouched in the corner and placed a finger to her lips, gesturing for me to be quiet. At last, the dark expression was gone from her face. She was smiling. It was the same sweet smile she had worn in the video while describing the boy who climbed the wall and broke his front tooth. I turned my head and buried my face in my brother-in-law's neck. Big brother, that bad man's shadow is almost completely eaten. My brother-in-law patted my back. Good. Footsteps sounded outside the door. A court officer entered and hauled Gu Ming out of the chair. As he reached the doorway, he suddenly stopped and looked back at the one-way glass. He could not see me. That child. Before he could finish, Luo Shanshan opened her mouth from behind him and swallowed half his face. He shuddered, and the rest of his words died in his throat. He kept feeling an eerie chill around him. The next day, my sister tested the quality of the new office desk my brother-in-law had purchased. It collapsed again. What kind of lousy desk is this? Looking at the desk split in two, my brother-in-law resignedly pulled out his phone and ordered a third one. I crouched in the corner of the room and picked up a piece of chocolate. It was the piece Gu Ming had offered me the day before. I unwrapped it and took a bite. The ghostly big sister crouched beside me, her head tilted. Is it sweet? I nodded, satisfied. She stood. Her form gradually faded until only a blurry white outline remained, and she walked toward the door. After 2 steps, she looked back at me. Thanks, little brat. The door opened, and morning light flooded in from the corridor. The white outline vanished. Chewing the chocolate, I answered indistinctly, you're welcome, ghost big sister, who are you talking to? My brother-in-law moved his ears and looked around in confusion. I was about to answer, when my sister suddenly looked at her phone and cried out, "Holy shit, evil really does bring its own punishment. Officer Chen just told me that the hypocrite Gu Ming died in the detention center. Apparently, the shock drove him insane. In the middle of the night, when the guards weren't looking, he started eating himself. They didn't discover him until the next morning. That's disgusting. I won't want to eat meat for the next month." Just when everyone assumed the insurance company's performance would plummet, the opposite happened. 1 week after the case became public, the company was flooded with business. The reason was simple and direct. My sister advertised the slogan, "Every grievance investigated. Every genuine accident paid." Customers harboring crooked intentions became too frightened to come, but customers with legitimate needs arrived in an endless stream. Most normal people did not want to commit insurance fraud. They simply wanted to leave their family's financial protection, without mysteriously putting themselves in danger after buying a policy, so my sister's company became their first choice. Business unexpectedly exploded. My own treatment improved along with it. My sister lifted me over her head. "You really are your sister's lucky star. Come here and give me a kiss." I dodged her in disgust. No, it's all slobbery." While we were fooling around, a new client arrived. It was a traffic accident. The words, "points of suspicion," had been circled on the evidence list, but the police had found nothing after investigating at 4 in the morning. A sanitation worker discovered the owner of the car at an intersection. The front of the vehicle had struck a nearby wall and was nearly half crushed inward. Experts examined the vehicle and found it functioning normally. There was nothing wrong with the brake pads either. The accident had begun after the owner quarreled with her husband and left home in the middle of the night. It looked like an ordinary accident, but after the previous cases, my sister immediately suspected the deceased woman's husband. Could he have drugged her? They both turned to look at me. I touched the insurance policy, then the evidence list, then I shook my head. I saw nothing. My brother-in-law exhaled in relief. My sister patted her chest. In less than half an hour, she efficiently transferred the money to the deceased woman's family. That scared me. I was beginning to think our company had terrible feng shui and every client was trying to commit fraud. It's been so long since we saw a normal accident. I'm moved. The computer chimed. "What is it? We missed one. There's another claim that hasn't been reviewed, a new case, for good. Friends took a self-driving road trip during summer vacation." But then what? My brother-in-law smacked his lips. 3 of the 4 died in a crash, only 1 survived. Her name is Xiao Qingyao. In her statement, she says she has no driver's license and was merely sitting in the front passenger seat giving directions. If that's true, she is a victim, so she won't owe compensation or face prison. Our insurance company will pay the entire claim. My sister asked curiously, "If she doesn't even have a license, she definitely wasn't driving, right?" "Xiaofu, can you see anything?" I ate a potato chip and sucked my fingers clean, then I carefully described the scene I saw. "No, that big sister is lying. She was the driver. She insisted there were no cars on the road and demanded to practice driving. She kept talking about QQ speed and being the racing god of Mount Akina. She drove incredibly fast, and then the car rolled over with everyone inside." I stared earnestly at the 3 brutally killed ghosts before me. After the car rolled over, that big sister crawled out by herself. She moved the big sister in the passenger seat into the driver's seat, then climbed into the passenger seat herself. My sister sprayed out a mouthful of water. Again, my brother-in-law's expression became grave. He took out a pen and notebook. "Xiaofu, say that again." I licked the remaining chip crumbs from my fingers and pointed at the 3 figures standing behind Xiao Qingyao. The 3 ghosts stood side by side, 2 women and 1 man. Their clothes were torn, and their faces were covered in blood and shards of glass. The woman on the far left had her neck bent at a strange angle. The man in the middle was missing an arm. Half the face of the woman on the right had caved in. All 3 stared fixedly in the same direction. I followed their gazes to a photograph attached to the insurance policy. Xiao Qingyao, 23 years old, smiled sweetly. She was driving, I repeated. She insisted on practicing because there were no traffic police in the uninhabited area. The big sister in the passenger seat kept shouting for her to slow down, but she wouldn't listen. She turned the car stereo up very loud and sang along. I tilted my head and carefully distinguished the scene the ghosts were noisily reconstructing. The song was, "All the Way North." My sister's face turned green. Then there was a curve ahead. She turned the steering wheel too sharply, and the car rolled over. Bang! It rolled 3 times, feeling that my account was not vivid enough. I imitated the ghosts' voices. Qingyao, slow down, there's a sharp bend ahead. What are you afraid of? I have an advanced QQ speed license. This road is much wider than the racetrack. Are you serious? You don't even have a real driver's license. Why are you? Then came the screaming, the sound of shattering glass, the dull impact of metal deforming. The world fell silent. I performed each of the four people's lines in turn. When I reached the part where the car rolled, I thoughtfully added the sound of hard braking. Bang, bang, bang. After hearing everything, my sister clenched her fists until her knuckles cracked. So after the accident, not only did she switch seats, but she stood there watching while the other three remained trapped inside the car. I nodded and pointed at the male ghost who was missing an arm. This big brother was still alive. He was pinned beneath the seat and lost a lot of blood. He kept calling her name and asking her to push the seat away and pull him out. Then what? Then she crouched outside the car and watched him. The male ghost's mouth moved, and I repeated his words. Qingyao, save me, I'm sorry. I can't let anyone discover that I was driving. The pen in my brother-in-law's hand bent under his grip. The office remained silent for 3 seconds. My sister suddenly smiled. The smile was more frightening than her fury. It was the kind of smile that said, in 12 years in this industry, I have never seen anything this inhuman, and today I absolutely must see what she looks like in person. Where is she? Waiting in the outer lobby for the reviewer's signature. My brother-in-law glanced at the surveillance monitor. Young woman in a white dress sat quietly on the sofa. Her long hair fell over her shoulders. Her eyes were swollen and red, and half a cup of barely touched tea sat beside her. She looked as though she had just been crying. Not bad acting. My sister removed her jacket and flexed her wrists. Come on, let's meet her. My sister's expression was terrifying. In the lobby, Zhao Qingyao immediately began performing when she saw us. Her tears arrived on command. I regret it so much. If only I had stopped them. They insisted on speeding. I was in the passenger seat, and no matter what I said, they wouldn't listen. Choking back sobs, she pressed a tissue to the corner of her eye. Even now, I have nightmares every night. I dream about them doing what? My sister sat across from her, her voice unusually calm. I dream that they blame me for failing to stop them. Zhao Qingyao's shoulders trembled with perfect timing. If only I had grabbed the steering wheel. At worst, I could have died with them. Grabbed the steering wheel, yes. If the turn hadn't been so sharp and I had reacted more quickly, perhaps I could have saved them. My sister nodded, pulled a sheet of paper from the folder, and pushed it toward Zhao Qingyao. This is a road surveillance image sent by the traffic police. Before you entered the uninhabited area, a roadside camera captured you passing the final gas station. Zhao Qingyao's eyelids twitched. You said you never touched the steering wheel. My sister tapped the photograph. Then why were you in the driver's seat before entering the uninhabited area? Zhao Qingyao's tears stopped. She opened her mouth, and a muscle beneath her cheek twitched. I may have remembered incorrectly. Everything was so chaotic. Maybe I was helping them move the car. Someone without a license was helping them move the car. My sister leaned back and crossed her legs, secretly pressing the record button. Fine, then look at this. She pulled out another sheet of paper. This time, it contained the vehicle analysis data. Components of nail polish had allegedly been detected on the steering wheel. There was nail polish on the steering wheel. Of the 4 people, you appear to be the only one with painted nails. Zhao Qingyao instinctively withdrew her hands into her sleeves. We were all in the same car. I touched the steering wheel while we were parked and resting. There's nothing strange about that, is there? Most of the polish remained on all 10 of her fingernails, still refusing to admit it. Do I need to keep producing evidence? My sister tilted her head, speaking as casually as though she were discussing what the cafeteria would serve for lunch. I'm actually curious about something. Would you answer one question? Zhao Qingyao said nothing. My sister continued. When you crouched outside the car listening to your friends beg you to save them, were you thinking about how legal responsibility would be assigned, or about 3 living human lives? At last, Zhao Qingyao's face turned completely white. How do you know? My sister snorted. Someone inside the car accidentally activated video recording on their phone. It captured everything. What a coincidence, don't you think? My sister was bluffing. There was no evidence at all, even the alleged detection of nail polish was fabricated. Otherwise, the police would have arrested Zhao Qingyao already. If Zhao Qingyao had opened the folder, she would have seen that it was blank. Unfortunately, terror had drained all color from her face, and she never noticed. I didn't want this either. If everyone discovered that I was driving, their parents would kill me. I didn't do it deliberately. The road was too steep. And the car was bad. Why should I pay so much money, even if I had called an ambulance? We were so far out in an uninhabited area that there weren't adequate medical facilities. They couldn't have survived anyway. How can this be my fault? At most, I only switched seats. The woman on the far left tilted her broken neck and moved her mouth beside Zhao Qingyao's ear. A useless idiot who failed the second section of the driving test 7 times still dared touch the steering wheel. I could not stop myself from bursting into laughter. My sister turned to me, her eyebrows raised high. What did she say this time? I leaned toward her ear and repeated the ghostly big sister's words. My sister froze, then laughed so hard she could barely breathe and nearly slid off the sofa. Xiaofu, you're hilarious. How did I never realize you had the makings of a comedian? She wiped away tears of laughter, stood, and picked up the insurance policy again. In the review field, she stamped a bright red seal. Claim denied. The 2 words were perfectly centered. Get out. Zhao Qingyao stared at the seal. Her lips trembled for a long time, but she finally failed to squeeze out any more tears. What gives you the right to refuse payment? Looking at the defiance on her face, my sister put away the policy and patted her shoulder. Go. A word of advice, if you turn yourself in, the punishment will be lighter. As she turned away, my sister winked at me. The 3 ghosts stood in the lobby and bowed slightly, one after another, to my sister and me, before the woman on the far left faded away. She flashed me a victory sign. I returned the gesture. Yes, another perfect day. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue reading. Had always believed that transmigration was an extremely unlikely event. Then one day, I woke up inside the body of an unfamiliar little girl, and I happened to stumble upon a murderer destroying a corpse. The moment the murderer and I stared at each other, I immediately turned and ran for my life. There was no time to consider how any of this had happened. Ahead of me, a young couple was being tender and affectionate in a small grove. It should have been a sweet expression of adolescent hormones, but the next second, the man abruptly locked an arm around the woman's neck. She screamed. Before she could react, he strangled her to death. Having just transmigrated, I was dumbfounded. I crouched behind a tree, too frightened to move. What was happening? I watched as the man stuffed the woman into a suitcase, then filled it with stones. He was preparing to throw her into the lake and destroy the evidence. The woman's skin was blue and purple. She appeared completely dead. Was it a revenge killing? It was late at night, in a small grove, with no surveillance cameras. Every possible advantage was stacked in his favor. I instinctively held my breath and edged backward as quietly as possible, although I still did not understand why. I had entered a little girl's body. Survival mattered most. I had to escape first. I felt through the pockets of my clothes. This body was young and carried no phone, only a little genius children's smartwatch. When I saw that the watch still had some battery power, I exhaled slightly and prepared to compose an emergency message to the police. The next second, loud, energetic music burst out. Mom is calling, Mom is calling. The ringtone was exceptionally conspicuous in the silent woods. My expression changed. I raised my head and looked straight into the eyes of the man preparing to dispose of the body. At that moment, only 3 words filled my mind. I was dead. I jolted in terror and sprinted away. The murderer's expression changed. He hurriedly abandoned the suitcase and charged after me. I looked back as I ran. This little girl was only a child and naturally had poor stamina. The murderer was a tall adult man. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before he caught me. Seeing him draw closer and closer, I knew I could not keep running blindly forward. I stopped abruptly, turned, and began climbing a nearby tree. By the time the murderer reached it, I had already scrambled to the crown using both hands and feet. Fuck, I heard the man curse. Then came a series of rustling sounds. He knew how to climb trees too. I pursed my lips. While he climbed, I trembled and crawled along a branch toward the next tree. The murderer confidently reached the top, only to find no one there. Where had I gone? Suddenly, his ears twitched. Leaves rustled faintly in the tree to his right, so that was where I had hidden. He snorted coldly and quickly pursued me to the right. You little brat. But the farther he chased and the more trees he climbed, the more abruptly the sound disappeared. A trace of doubt gradually rose in his heart. Something was wrong. He had clearly been following the sound while chasing the child. How had I suddenly vanished? Had I already jumped down and escaped? He leaned out and looked at the ground. The grove was exceptionally quiet. There was no one below. If the child had jumped from the tree, there should have been noise, but he had heard nothing. Where could I be hiding? The murderer scanned his surroundings warily. Only the sound of a light breeze moving through the grove remained. Suddenly, the faint sound of water shifting broke the silence. It was nearly inaudible. If his hearing had not been unusually sharp since childhood, he would never have noticed. The murderer whipped his head toward the lake. Under the moonlight, a dark head floated in the middle of the water, swimming desperately toward the opposite shore. His expression changed. He jumped directly from the tree and plunged into the water. A few minutes earlier, I had realized that if I remained hidden in the grove, he would eventually catch me. I needed another path of escape. When I saw the lake, something stirred in my mind. An idea immediately appeared. After deliberately making the murderer believe I was moving through the trees, I had quietly climbed down halfway along the route. Then I threw a rock hard into the trees in the opposite direction, deliberately creating noise so he would think I had panicked and fled deeper into the grove. An adult's contempt for a little girl was my strongest weapon. Once he had moved far away, I quietly slipped into the water and escaped. In truth, if he had lowered his head at the time, he would have seen the top of mine. It had been a very narrow escape. When I heard a splash behind me, I cursed inwardly and accelerated in terror. I kicked through the water with both legs as hard as I could. Faster, I had to go faster. Using both hands and feet, I scrambled ashore in an almost pathetic state. I had chosen to swim to the opposite shore because there was a scenic area on the mountain there, with a parking lot at its base. If there were tourists, there was hope. Is anyone there? Help. No one answered. That made sense. Who would spend the night sleeping in a car? I looked down at the watch. Water had gotten inside, and it was completely dead. Should I keep running toward the outskirts or hide beneath a car? As I hesitated, I suddenly noticed that one car's trunk had not closed completely, leaving a narrow gap. I took a deep breath and made a decision. There was little point in continuing to run. There was no one in the outskirts, and an exhausted little girl could easily be caught by an adult. It would be better to hide quietly and wait for rescue. The watch had location tracking. If I could hold on, my chances of survival were better than if I ran blindly. With that thought, I decisively climbed inside and gently closed the trunk. There was little room inside the car, and several boxes of local specialties had been packed there. I curled tightly behind the boxes and tried to reduce my panting to the faintest possible sound. Before long, a dense series of footsteps approached. I did not even need to look. I knew the man would search beneath the cars for me. In fact, I was right outside my sight. The murderer flattened himself beneath a car like a gecko. His footsteps repeatedly moved away and drew near as he searched for me. I covered my mouth tightly, not daring to make the slightest sound. I was even exceptionally careful with every breath. Could that little girl not be hiding here? Forget it. Dawn is approaching. I should bury the body first. The footsteps lingered for a long time before finally leaving. In frustration, my heart pounded, but I remained silent. Inside the car, I was afraid he was trying to lure me out. Had I emerged, I would have seen the murderer's face pressed tightly against the car window, his eyes constantly scanning the interior. I waited patiently for a while longer. Damn it, she really isn't here, the murderer cursed, and his footsteps gradually receded. Still unwilling to give up, he kicked the car door several times, crawled beneath the car again, and checked to make certain no one was hiding underneath. Had he truly left this time? I still did not dare come out. The most dangerous place was often the safest, so I decided to hide until dawn. I did not know how long I waited before breathing gradually became difficult. Suddenly, I remembered something. If a car's air circulation was not running, the summer heat made suffocation inside the trunk a serious risk. Should I get out? The interior grew hotter and hotter. Sweat soaked my entire back. If I stayed any longer, would either die from the heat or suffocate. I pressed my ear close and made certain there was not a sound outside. Then I cautiously opened the trunk. The next second, my body froze. A sinister face appeared before me. He had never left at all. My scalp immediately tingled with terror. I hurried to close the trunk again, but he had prepared for this. Without hesitation, he held the trunk open and reached inside to drag me out. Bitch, did you enjoy making a fool of me? Just as I fell into despair, a thunderous shout rang out. Don't move. The police had arrived. The little girl's mother must have realized something was wrong and called the police using the location data. The murderer clearly panicked. Seizing the opportunity, I gritted my teeth and pulled the trunk downward with all my strength. He screamed when it clamped onto his fingers. Several officers rushed forward and arrested him. With both witnesses and physical evidence present, he could not escape justice. Only then did I exhale in relief. My eyes rolled back, and I completely lost consciousness. After running and swimming, this body had long since reached its limit. When I opened my eyes again, I unexpectedly found myself back inside my own body. What had happened? I stared in shock at the body I had regained, my mind completely confused. Had it been a dream? but every sensation had been far too real. I hurriedly took out my phone and searched the latest reports. Several live photographs had been posted in the comments. They were shaky and blurry, but at a glance, I recognized the little girl in them as the body I had occupied. Her clothes, shoes, and watch were identical. Did that mean everything I experienced the night before had been real? But I had clearly been sleeping safely in my bed. Why had I entered someone else's body? I frowned deeply. Most importantly, had the transmigration been accidental? Would it happen only once, or would I enter another person's body every time I slept? After thinking, I went to the supermarket downstairs, bought a camera, installed it in my bedroom with a live internet connection, and locked the door securely. I glared at my pillow as though it were a bitter enemy. Then I took a deep breath and threw myself down. I could not avoid sleep for the rest of my life. Unlike the night before, this time I enjoyed a wonderful nap. Nothing dangerous was triggered. Had the transmigration merely been a coincidence? I shook my head and stopped thinking about it. There was no pattern to the phenomenon. Even if I understood it, there was nothing I could do now. I might as well let nature take its course. After the first transmigration, I slept well for more than a month. I never inexplicably entered another person's body again. Had the first incident truly been a coincidence? As time passed, I simply put the matter behind me and relaxed. No one could spend 1,000 days guarding against a thief. Then, that very night, I transmigrated again. The moment I opened my eyes and found myself in another unfamiliar, dark place, I understood that it had happened again. The corner of my mouth twitched involuntarily. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. This time was a little better than the last. At least I was not a defenseless little girl. I was now inside a strong adult woman, but the situation seemed even worse. I had arrived too late. The original owner of the body had already been tied to a chair by the rainy night butcher. Each of her limbs was bound to one of the chair's four corners. She was an honest corporate employee trapped in the 996 grind, working from 9 in the morning until 10 at night and frequently staying overtime. Unfortunately, her luck was poor. The rainy night butcher spotted her on the way home from overtime work, and she became his unlucky prey. I tried twisting one wrist. The plastic tie was extremely tight and would not move, much less break free. The room was pitch black. I could not see my hand in front of my face, and the dimness was terrifying. A torrential storm hammered outside the window, loud enough to conceal every trace of sound. I sighed softly. To save on rent, the original owner lived in a remote urban village. She could scream to heaven and earth, and no one would answer. No wonder she had been selected as prey. A row of tools lay across the table: an axe, duckbill pliers, a scalpel, a saw, and more. Her phone had been confiscated. The wardrobe had clearly been searched, and clothes were scattered everywhere. Done screaming for help. Beside me, the man laughed in a low voice. He was still wearing a raincoat, letting water drip onto the floor of the rented room. His face was completely covered. I suppressed my fear and tried to negotiate. "Sir, if I give you all my money, will you let me go?" The murderer chuckled. "Let you go?" I pretended not to understand. "Yes, isn't that what robbers on television do?" "Sir, I'm just an ordinary office worker. I really don't have much money." "You robbed the wrong person. Why don't I give you my boss's address instead?" Before I could finish, the murderer suddenly raised a hammer and brought it down viciously. The hammer, weighing dozens of pounds, smashed into my ankle. "Ah!" I screamed, my entire body convulsing uncontrollably from the pain. The bones in my ankle seemed to have been brutally shattered. He sneered. "Bitch, are you pretending to be innocent with me? I hate women like you who put on an act more than anything. Don't think I don't know. Your phone's browsing history is filled with news alerts about the rainy night butcher, dressed like this. Do you expect me to believe you don't recognize me? You're pretending to be stupid." My heart sank. So he had already searched through the original owner's phone. It seemed I could no longer maintain the act. Anxiety surged inside me. Recently, I had also seen many news reports about women living alone being murdered. All the victims were beautiful single women who lived alone, and every killing occurred while it was raining. When their bodies were discovered, they had died gruesomely after suffering extensive and inhuman torture. Some commenters speculated that the rainy night butcher had to be a male incel. He both craved women and hated them. Although he despised women intensely, he had an abnormal desire to possess them. He was suspicious, sensitive, and easily provoked. Such a man did not consider women human. In his eyes, women were resources or objects. Some people speculated that the rainy night butcher must have been abused by a woman during childhood. Otherwise, he would not have attacked his victims so viciously. His goal was clearly torture and murder. The murderer took out a scalpel, lifted my clothing, and traced the cold blade back and forth across my skin. He seemed to be deciding where to begin cutting. The icy blade sent a shiver through me. The next second, there was a wet stab. The scalpel plunged straight into my abdomen. The murderer watched me with amusement. "Don't worry, as the most beautiful prey I've found so far, I won't let you die easily." My body poured sweat from the pain, and I could not stop myself from curling inward. This body might not belong to me, but I was genuinely experiencing every torment inflicted upon it. The man took a claw-like tool from beside him. My pupils contracted sharply. I had seen that oddly shaped instrument in a documentary. It was used for skinning. Was this monster going to skin me alive? Just as the tool was about to touch my scalp, cold sweat erupted across my back, and I hurriedly shouted, "Wait, before you kill me, can you let me say goodbye to my ex-boyfriend?" The murderer's curiosity was aroused. "Oh, I thought you would rather say goodbye to your parents." Remembering the online speculation, I rolled my eyes and deliberately assumed a troubled expression. I used to be vain and materialistic, and I wronged my ex-boyfriend, but I truly loved him. I was the one who failed him. Before I die, I only want to beg his forgiveness. I saw a trace of satisfaction cross the man's face. It appeared my guess was correct. A woman had hurt him, and he liked watching women kneel and beg for mercy. Perhaps he had been dumped before. He took out his phone and motioned for me to deliver my final words while he recorded the video. He placed the hammer threateningly on my other ankle. "You'd better not try anything." I nodded fearfully, racked my brain, and invented a rambling farewell apologizing to my ex-boyfriend. I delayed as long as possible, but it could not last forever. 15 minutes later, once he had enjoyed watching me weep and repent, the murderer closed his phone in satisfaction. His patience was gone. "All right, time for you to go." The blade slashed toward the top of my head, ready to begin peeling from my scalp. My heart lurched and nearly leaped from my chest. Suddenly, the phone in the man's pocket began ringing. He clicked his tongue in impatient disgust. "Hello, fine." In a moment, I listened closely, unable to tell who was on the call. After hanging up, the murderer cast me a sinister glance and set down the tool. "Wait until I come back." My brow moved, cold sweat covered my back. He was leaving. Before departing, the murderer checked the restraints again to ensure I was tied securely. He also stuffed a rag into my mouth so I could not call for help. "Behave yourself." Only after checking everything did he reluctantly lock the door and leave the rented room. I listened as the footsteps outside moved farther away. With difficulty, I raised my head and looked through the window. I watched the raincoat figure walk into the storm and disappear. This was my opportunity. I pushed the cloth out of my mouth with my tongue. I cautiously shifted my body and forced my waist upward, trying to bring the belt around my waist within reach of my wrist. Once, twice, 3 times, I reached it. My eyes lit up. I wriggled until one side of the belt passed through the center of the plastic tie around my right wrist, then fastened it again with my teeth. Fortunately, the original owner was wearing jeans with a belt that day. Otherwise, I truly could not have escaped quickly. I accidentally tugged the wound during the process and sucked in a cold breath from the pain. Once the belt hung naturally to the floor, I quickly hooked it with my foot, stepped down, and kicked with all my strength for leverage. The plastic tie instantly snapped. After freeing one wrist, I had an empty hand, and the remaining ties were much easier. Within 2 or 3 movements, I had broken free. Blood had pooled in my bound limbs. Suppressing the pain, I staggered toward the door. The murderer had taken my phone, so I had to go outside and find someone to help. My hand closed around the doorknob, and I was about to escape, when something outside the window caught the corner of my eye. In the torrential rain, a man in a raincoat was hurrying back. An axe appeared and disappeared beneath the coat. My heart lurched. Only a few minutes had passed. Why had the murderer returned so quickly? Dense goosebumps rose across my back, and my legs weakened. Wait, inspiration suddenly struck me. The kitchen. There was a cleaver in the kitchen. I took a deep breath and sprinted toward it. Then I suddenly noticed 2 smoked cigarette butts on the floor. One was slim, and the other was thick. Why would one male smoker smoke 2 different kinds of cigarettes? No. My pupils contracted to pinpoints. There was a third person in the room. Almost the next second, a shadow crawled out from beneath the bed. Damn it. The news had only said there was one rainy night butcher. It had never mentioned an accomplice. Reacting quickly, I took a large step backward, turned, and ran. Unfortunately, I noticed too late. The shadow was too fast. The next second, he lunged forward. He locked me in a standing rear naked choke, wrapping both arms around my neck and tightening inward. Ugh. My eyes nearly burst from their sockets. My entire face rapidly flushed and turned reddish-purple. I could not draw in a single breath. I desperately clawed at the arms around my neck, but it was useless. I felt his grip tighten with almost savage force, my vision quickly went black, my brain was receiving too little blood, a warning that I was about to lose consciousness. My struggles weakened, and my legs twitched helplessly. A few seconds later, my eyes rolled back and I passed out completely. Both arms dropped limply. The man looked down, then gradually loosened his grip. There was a thud, my entire body slid softly to the floor, unconscious. The man was not tall, he was clearly shorter and slighter than the murderer from before. It appeared one of them carried out the killings while the other planned everything from behind the scenes. He lifted one of my eyelids with a finger and leaned close to examine it. The person on the floor had unfocused pupils and appeared to have genuinely lost consciousness from suffocation. The man exhaled in relief and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Fortunately, he had been clever and had never shown his face, just in case otherwise, the bitch truly would have escaped today. Outside the door, the raincoat murderer heard faint movement inside the rented room. His steps stopped, then immediately quickened. He took out his key and tried the lock, but the door would not move. It had been locked from the inside. His instincts warned him something was wrong. Darkness crossed his eyes as he raised the axe at his waist, preparing to hack through the lock. Suddenly, the short man heard the noise and hurriedly shouted, "Don't make any noise, I'm in here, I've already taken care of this bitch." This brute was clumsy, no matter how hard the rain was falling. The sound of an axe breaking down the door could easily be heard. That would jeopardize their plan. He could not be allowed to act recklessly. Hearing this, the raincoat killer lowered his axe. Did she get away? The man curled his lip. This woman is a little smarter than the last few, but that's all. Long hair, short on sense, she's still an idiot. She managed to slip out of the restraints with a little cleverness. But she never imagined there were two of us. Ha ha ha, wait there. I'll tie her up and come open the door for you. The killer relaxed. He crouched quietly outside the door. The man inside failed to notice that the unconscious person at his feet had suddenly opened her eyes. While he was talking to the killer outside, I sprang up from the floor and, without a word, wrapped my arm around his neck. The man's eyes flew wide open. He probably never imagined that a woman he had choked unconscious could recover so quickly. She had even copied his technique and turned it against him, trapping his neck in a rear naked choke. My timing was perfect. The instant he finished his last sentence to the killer, I latched onto him. I locked my arms around his throat with all my strength. Now he could not make even the faintest whimper. All he could do was kick his legs helplessly, just as I had moments ago. His accomplice outside assumed the short man was dragging my body and jokingly urged him to hurry. In reality, the short man was foaming at the mouth in my grip, his eyes rolling back. A few seconds later, I felt his body grow heavy. The man in my arms had passed out. At that moment, a strange feeling crossed the killer's mind outside the door. It shouldn't take this long just to tie someone up, should it, Brother Zhao? He waited quietly for several seconds, but no answer came from inside. Even a fool would have known something was wrong. The killer's expression changed sharply. He raised his axe and hacked at the lock. Once, twice, 3 times. There was a loud bang. The lock shattered. With a creak, the door swung open. The room was completely empty. When he saw the man lying on the floor, his pupils contracted sharply. Zhao, cough, cough, hurry, go after her. Clutching his red, strangled neck, the man lay sprawled on the floor and gasped for breath. The killer looked at the man on the floor, then at the fan vent that had been removed in the kitchen. Gritting his teeth, he turned and sprinted toward the door in pursuit. Unlike a woman, he was too large to squeeze through the opening and could only go around through the front door to chase her. In the downpour, the figure of a young woman stumbled through the alley. Help! The killer's expression changed. He was just about to hurl the axe at her. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared at the end of the alley. Several police officers rushed over with flashlights and caught hold of the woman. Ma'am, are you all right? What happened? I hurriedly pointed behind me, but when I turned around, there was no one there anymore. When I woke again, I was back inside my own body. It seemed the danger had passed, but even if I had survived this time, there would always be a next time. Crime would never disappear from the world. I had to understand why this was happening. If the body I entered died, would I die as well? Was there a limit to the distance? Would any murder, no matter where it happened, affect me? I had already crossed over twice, yet I still could not discern any pattern. As a thought occurred to me, I abruptly sat up, took out my phone, and checked the surveillance footage. On the recording, I was sleeping as soundly as ever. There was no visible difference at all. I sighed. Forget it. I would keep observing for now. Thinking alone would never produce an answer. Life continued as peacefully as ever. Strangely, however, I saw no news that the Rainy Night Butcher had been arrested. Had the story simply not made the news? Or had the killers already fled by the time the police arrived? My expression changed as a wave of unease rose in my heart. Are you afraid of the Rainy Night Butcher too? At the bus stop, a frail-looking young man wearing glasses stood beside me and suddenly spoke. Only then did I realize that my Bluetooth earbuds had failed to connect and the news video on my phone was playing through the speaker. He smiled. If you don't mind, I can walk you to the entrance of your apartment complex. He pointed toward the sky. It happened to be pouring rain that day. It was also late at night, and I was a woman out alone. He smiled kindly. You don't have to be afraid. My sister is about your age. I just think it's dangerous for a woman to be out alone. Or I can walk you to a shop by the street, and you can ask your parents to come down and meet you. My expression stiffened, thinking I was socially anxious. He tried to persuade me a few more times. He had no idea that I had recognized his voice. This young man's voice was exactly the same as the Rainy Night Butcher's. My fingers trembled slightly as I slowly turned my head. In disbelief, he was dressed like a college student, wearing a blue Adidas outfit and Vans sneakers, with over-ear headphones hanging around his neck. He looked fair-skinned and clean-cut. Together with his concerned expression, his appearance seemed completely harmless and could easily make someone lower her guard, but I would recognize that voice even if I were reduced to ashes. Could he actually be the Rainy Night Butcher himself? Cold sweat gathered in my palms. No, thank you, I've already messaged my roommates. Several of them will be here at the stop to meet me any minute. Several, yes, everyone in our dorm is very close. We like doing everything together. Several beads of cold sweat appeared on my forehead at the word roommates. A dark glint seemed to pass through the young man's eyes. He subtly positioned himself in the direction I would need to take to escape, ensuring that he could stop me immediately. A few young women still wouldn't be safe. Why don't I walk all of you back to your dorm? But, he paused, there doesn't seem to be a university nearby, does there? Which university do you attend? I murmured softly. A private university. It isn't well known. Most people haven't heard of it. In truth, I was so nervous I could have died. I was not a college student at all, nor did I have roommates. I was merely an overworked office employee. He remained where he was, showing no intention of leaving. There were hardly any passers-by nearby, either. Just as I was racking my brain, a passerby suddenly stepped in front of me. What are you doing? She already turned you down. Are you still trying to hit on her? The young man was speechless. I'm worried it isn't safe for her to be out alone, so I only wanted to walk her part of the way. You're reading too much into it. I have a girlfriend. Angrily, he lit up his phone screen. His wallpaper was a couple's photo of him with a cute young woman. Oh, please, plenty of people cheat even when they're in relationships. I think you just find her pretty and want to hit on her. The two traded barbs and began arguing, with a female passerby speaking up for me. My heart only beat faster, because the passerby in front of me was unmistakably the killer's accomplice. So the Rainy Night Butcher had never been two men at all. The killers were a man and a woman. I had made the wrong assumption earlier. I had seen a short person with cropped hair dressed in men's clothing, so I had instinctively assumed it was a short man. In reality, it was a woman with short hair. No wonder her voice had sounded strange to me that night, as though she were deliberately making it hoarse. She had been disguised as a man. Rotten men are the worst. Miss, let me take you home. We women have to be wary of men. The short-haired woman winked at me playfully and casually linked her arm through mine. Startled, I instinctively tried to pull my arm away, but I discovered I could not move it at all. The young man shrugged. Fine. Fine, do whatever you want. I'm the bad guy. All right. Despite his words, he positioned himself squarely in the only direction of escape, blocking my route, and the woman was pressed so close to me that if I took out my phone to text the police, she would notice immediately. Whether they would resort to force then was impossible to say. At least for now, they were still willing to keep up the act with me. With that thought, I gave her a grateful smile. All right, thank you, you're so kind. I followed the woman's pull and walked toward the alley. There was a shortcut here that would get us to the university faster. Miss, why are you wearing a scarf around your neck when it's so hot? The woman discreetly covered her neck. Oh, it's an accessory. Isn't this fashionable right now? My gaze darkened. She was indeed the other killer. Wait, just as we were about to leave the bus stop, I suddenly spoke. Both of them immediately fixed their eyes on me. I touched the umbrella in the woman's hand. Let me hold the umbrella. Seeing that I was completely unguarded and appeared obedient and innocent, The short-haired woman agreed without objection. She was afraid that saying too much might make me realize something was wrong. I took the opportunity to slip my arm free and breathed a sigh of relief. The two of us shared the umbrella and started toward the side road, out of my sight. The woman turned and raised her eyebrows triumphantly at the man. We had taken only 2 steps when the sound of an approaching vehicle came from behind us. I turned around. The bus had arrived. Before the woman could react, I threw the umbrella aside without hesitation and dashed toward the bus. Goodbye, now that the bus is here, you don't have to trouble yourself to escort me. The bus driver had only just opened the door when a dark figure shot inside like a cannonball. Had he not seen that it was human-shaped, he might have thought it was a female ghost. The woman froze in shock. She clearly had not expected the foolish, obedient young woman from moments ago to turn around and board the bus. I moved so quickly that she had no time to react before I sprang onto the bus. The woman's face twisted with rage. She tried to chase me onto the bus, but the man reached out and stopped her. He gave her a slight shake of his head. The two watched helplessly as the bus drove away, grinding their teeth in frustration. We'll wait for the next target. Why didn't you let me chase her? That one was perfect. There are surveillance cameras on the bus. If anything gets traced back to us, we'll be in trouble. Please, everyone knows the Rainy Night Butcher is a man. Right now, I'm just an innocent female passerby. We should still be cautious. For some reason, the man's heart had been pounding moments ago. His instincts told him he absolutely must not follow me. The bus driver's mouth twitched as he looked at me. Young lady, hurry and wipe yourself off. The floor is covered in water. I had no time to worry about that and urgently shouted at the driver. Go to the police station right now. The driver stared blankly. What happened? Was something stolen? You can call the police yourself when you get off. The bus still has to continue to the next stop. I hurriedly explained. Those 2 people at the bus stop are fugitives. There's no time. The driver was stunned and immediately turned the steering wheel. So just now, you almost, he felt guilty. A moment ago, he had resented the young woman for getting the bus wet and had nearly refused to let her board. The bus veered from its route and sped straight through the police station gates. By then, the man and woman had already found their next target. To prevent what had just happened from happening again, the woman tightly linked arms with the young woman this time and refused to let go. She played the part of a caring older sister. They could not allow another target already within their grasp to escape. The same script unfolded again, with another young woman as the victim. MMPH, as she was dragged into the room, the young woman struggled constantly, her eyes full of tears. The man looked around warily. Move faster, stop dawdling. For some reason, his heart was beating unusually fast tonight. Frowning, he thought again of the target who had escaped and felt a surge of regret. They had not even had a chance to begin. No matter how clever the target was, she could not possibly have guessed their true identities. Much less had any evidence with which to call the police. Besides, they had not revealed a single flaw from beginning to end. So what if the target went to the police? He had merely wanted to escort her home out of kindness. Who could know that he was the infamous Rainy Night Butcher? Thinking of the target's face, the killer narrowed his eyes and sneered. He had engraved her face in his memory. She would be next, tied to a chair. The young woman stared at the row of instruments of torture, her eyes filled with despair. Who could save her? The killer worked faster and faster. Sharpening his knife in anticipation, he told the woman to dispose of the evidence while he began here. Something still feels wrong. Go keep watch at the entrance to the alley. I'll come as soon as I'm finished. You're ordering me around now. Don't you trust me to handle things? There aren't any cameras nearby. Who could guess what we're doing? The woman snorted with disdain. Despite what she said, her body obediently moved toward the exit. They could not have committed so many crimes without being caught if they were careless. She planned to wait at the alley entrance and pretend to be waiting for a ride, so she could notify him immediately if anything happened. At worst, even if her accomplice was caught, she could still escape safely. The moment she stepped out of the alley, she saw a row of police officers blocking the road in perfect formation. Every one of them was holding a gun. The woman's eyes widened. No sooner had she poked her head out of the alley than dozens of guns were trained on it at once. The woman shrank back and pretended to be frightened. What was going on? Officers, is there a criminal inside? I'm only passing by. Before she could finish, she saw me standing among the officers under their protection. We stared at each other. Her pupils contracted as if she had realized something. Before she could invent an excuse, I immediately pointed at her. That's her. The police moved swiftly. Almost the next second, they subdued the woman and pinned her to the ground. What are you doing? Help, MMPH. To stop her from warning her accomplice, they gagged her and immediately confiscated her phone. Meanwhile, Inside the room, the killer kept looking at his phone. The woman had not sent him any messages. Something was wrong. After thinking for 2 seconds, he decisively abandoned everything and prepared to flee. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing was best. Too many strange things had happened that night. For safety's sake, he would retreat first. He moved quickly, packing up his tools in a few motions and wiping away every trace in the room. When he saw the young woman looking at him imploringly, the killer's eyes remained calm and completely unmoved. He raised his dagger, intending to finish the target with one stroke and leave at once. Before the terrified young woman's eyes, there was an enormous bang. The door was kicked open, and a group of police officers rapidly poured into the room. The killer was utterly dumbfounded when he saw the room filled with officers. Had his accomplice betrayed him? But when he saw the woman tied up and held by the police, he immediately discarded that conclusion. No, if his accomplice had betrayed him, she should have escaped, not been arrested herself. Then how had the two of them been discovered? There had been no flaws in the way they committed their crimes. They had never even shown their faces on camera. Their public identities were perfectly ordinary. They appeared to be law-abiding citizens in every way. So why was this happening now? The killer's face darkened. The next second, he abruptly turned and fled toward the window. Now that he had been discovered, his only option was to run. His hand was already on the windowsill, and half his body had made it outside. But what greeted him was not the air of freedom. It was an orderly row of black gun barrels outside the window. The killer's expression became extraordinarily ugly. The area beyond the window had clearly been checked long ago. Where had the police come from? Don't move. Take one more step and we'll shoot. The police had already surrounded the building completely, forming an impenetrable cordon. The killer froze in place, unable to advance or retreat. With no possible escape, he slowly turned his head and looked at the group of heavily armed officers by the door, then at his restrained accomplice. Confusion and unwillingness flashed through his eyes. In their previous cases, they had eliminated every shred of evidence, and no one had been able to do anything to him. Even if the authorities caught hold of a clue, he was confident he could escape conviction. But here they had been caught in the act. The murder weapons were still on him, and the victim was alive. Not even an immortal could save him now. How did you find this place? No one answered him. 2 officers quickly stepped forward, yanked him away from the window, twisted his arms behind his back, and handcuffed him. You are suspected of multiple serious crimes. You are now under arrest in accordance with the law. The killer saw me standing under police protection in the crowd, and disbelief flashed through his eyes. But how did you know that I was? He could not understand it no matter how hard he thought. Where had they exposed themselves? He had disposed of the evidence so thoroughly. He had never even shown his face. It was true that they had intended to make this woman their target for the night, but they had never succeeded. Before they could even reveal their intentions, the woman had boarded a bus and left on her own. Moreover, the 3 of them had never met before. How could she be certain that the 2 of them were the rainy night butcher? Simply because he had kindly offered to escort her home. The killer could not believe it. Was something wrong with this woman's mind? This is completely impossible. The killer glared darkly at me, both shocked and furious. He looked as if his kindness had been repaid with ingratitude. Shielded behind the police, my heart was still pounding. Only when I saw the young woman safely rescued did my legs go weak and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The kidnapped young woman was trembling all over, her face streaked with tears. The moment she saw the police, she burst into sobs and repeatedly said, "Thank you." I also felt a lingering fear. Had we arrived one step later, the young woman would probably have died. Seeing that the victim was still alive, the officer in charge breathed a sigh of relief. She had even prepared for the worst. If she had entered and found another body, she feared she might have lost her job. They had the victim's testimony as well as the instruments used in the crime. The 2 had been caught red-handed. There was nothing left to argue. Both were arrested immediately. Only while giving my statement at the police station did I learn the truth about the 2 of them. The man's surname was Shen. He was 25 years old and had been abused by his mother as a child. The short-haired woman's surname was Lin. She was 29, and the 2 were a couple. Shen committed the murders, while Lin lured the victims into their trap. They had committed more than 10 crimes using brutal methods, yet had never left any direct evidence. There had been no eyewitnesses, no surveillance footage showing their faces, and after every crime they had meticulously erased every trace from the scene. If I had not stayed alert that night, boarded the bus in time, and gone directly to the police station, they might have remained at large and continued killing. They had come within a hair's breadth of escaping again. The veteran officer taking my statement looked at me in amazement. "Young lady, how did you know those 2 were wanted criminals?" I gave an awkward laugh. I have pretty good instincts. I just felt there was something wrong with them. It was only a coincidence." A thoughtful look crossed the veteran officer's eyes, and he asked no more questions. What mattered was that the criminals had been caught. By the time I finished giving my statement, it was already late at night. When I stepped out of the police station, the night wind felt chilly against my face. I looked back at the station, uncertain whether my decision to conceal my ability that day had been right or wrong. After a moment's hesitation, I turned back toward the station entrance. With great power comes great responsibility. I had a feeling that I would cross over again, even if only to protect myself. I had to tell the truth, otherwise, whether I would survive the next time remained unknown. Perhaps joining the authorities would give me a chance to live. After hearing the stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.